Hello, everyone, and welcome to my final presentation here for my Cornerstone project in ECN 4010. And I decided to do it on the student loan crisis. This is a topic that I've personally found pretty interesting when looking at it earlier in the course. So I just kind of wanted to circle back and learn a little more and see what else I can learn about it. So, without further ado, we're going to look into kind of the early intentions and what goal they were trying to achieve before all the issues started. So the early intentions were to increase access to higher education across the board, and this was to try to get more people that maybe want to have access to higher education or couldn't afford it into those higher education roles, um, just to try to give more equal opportunity all the way across the board. And the next reason was to promote socioeconomic mobility, which is kind of the same thing. Just try to increase access for other people, all kinds, to be able to get into those roles that require higher education. And then lastly, the plan was to develop a stronger workforce, all more around, and to have different types of people in there to really develop a whole workforce and kind of be able to use the whole American population as one instead of just kind of already having the same types of people in those roles. So now we're going to move to the winners and losers. It's pretty obvious in this situation. The losers were the students because they were going very deep into loan in lots of situations, lots of times that they didn't really need to, or for a very low earning degree for something that they weren't even going to use. So most situations are the losers are students. And then the winners, there's not really many winners because most student loans are federally held by the government. So technically the government would be one winner. And then recently, or not recently, but in the last 20, 30 years, they made it legal for secondhand banks and loan agencies to be able to sell these loans. So they kind of benefit on some of these situations. So now we're going to move to the beginning of the student loan crisis. So the thing that really sparked it was the Higher Education Act of 1965. And this was just kind of made it legal to have federal loans, and it gave lots of platforms and lots of programs to allow students to begin taking out loans from the government to get higher education and even just for regular education as well. And then another thing that has really drove up prices and created this crisis is the rising cost of college and higher education. If you just look at the percentages and how much college education has increased over the years, it's really no wonder that some people are trying to pull these loans and be in position to go to college because it's not affordable for most people, and a lot of times it's way overpriced and just out of the question. There's also financial deregulation. So this made it so private lenders could come in and draw up whatever kind of loans they wanted, draw up whatever terms they had, and just kind of present it to students blindly, and they would just sign on the dotted line, and that would in turn put them in very much financial harm because they would just blindly give these student loans out, and kids didn't really know what they were, but they obviously wanted to go to college and didn't have the financial means to do it up front. So this was kind of their only option. Now we're going to look into change over the years. So now some changes over the years. These are some things that they've kind of tried to do to help come to aid and help all the people that are in head over heels in debt. The first one is income-driven repayment plans. So for people that don't make quite enough money to support their payments and to keep up on their student debts, they just kind of look at what they're making, look at their income, and they make them pay the percentage of their income that makes sense for the debt that they owe. And then in most cases, the balance of that monthly payment or whatever it is, that's just forgiven by the government. And then there's public service loan forgiveness. So this is like teachers or people who work in public service, law enforcement, things of that nature. Once you work in that service for a certain amount of time, while you're paying your student loans off, a lot of times the government will come and forgive all the rest of your loans. Is once you have worked in a public service job for a steady amount of time. And then there's lots of other loan forgiveness programs out there. Um, Several different ways you can apply, and then there's also been talk of just blanket loan forgiveness, which obviously that was kind of big news here about 6-8 months ago. I think that got struck down by the Supreme Court, but we were really close to having large scale loan forgiveness. So that's just something to keep an eye on, and I know a lot of people will be pushing for. So now we're going to look at the costs incurred by the crisis here. So there's been large economical costs, obviously. To be exact, there's been $1.75 trillion in total student debt right now as of April 2024, which is really a staggering number when you think of 1.75 trillion. That's an unfathomable number, and it's hard to imagine that people are ever going to get those paid off. It's just craziness. So those are the financial costs, but also when people take out student loans, it'll really take borrowers and put them well behind in the personal finance world. They're going to be starting college with $100,000 sometimes in debt. Like, that's just a lot harder to start life with. So it just puts them behind the 8 ball in terms of their personal finances. And then since your finances are that bad, sometimes it can hurt your ability to climb the ladder or do anything else because you're so strapped to the debt that you've incurred over these past years, which can really be dangerous. So now we're going to go into the 7 principles here that we learned over this course. So principle 1, free people are not equal and equal people are not free. I feel that this public policy meets the standard set in principle 1 because people are free to choose the route in which they go with their education. They're able to go out and take out a loan if they want, or they're able to do other things or kind of slowly go through college to pay their way. So that's kind of my thoughts on principle 1. Moving to principle 2, what belongs to you, you tend to take care of, and what belongs to no one or everyone tends to fall into disrepair. In terms of principle 2, I feel that this issue fails to meet the standard because a lot of people are taking on these large amounts of debt, and you would expect them to take better care of it because, in a sense, it is their debt. And a lot of people, when at a young age, when they take on these large student debt numbers, they just kind of think, well, we'll deal with it down the road. But really, you're taking on that debt up front, and they're just kind of hoping for a government bailout on the back end, which is really crazy, and I don't think should really ever happen because that's just lack of responsibility and something that's not right to all the other people out there that worked really hard to get through their education without taking on loans or taking on minimal loans and paying them back as they should have. So that's principle 2. Moving on to principle 3. So now looking into principle 3, I feel that this issue fails to meet the standards set in principle 3 because the people that are taking out these loans are not considering the long run's effect, and they're just simply looking at the short run effects, and they're seeing, oh, right now I get to go to college and I get to spend all my time doing this, but they're not thinking about what life's going to look like after college when they have these huge debts. So that's kind of principle 3 and my thoughts on it. Principle 4, if you encourage something, you get more of it. If you discourage something, you get less of it. I feel that this public policy issue meets the standard set in principle 4 because in high school, advisors will push college onto students, even if it's not in the best long-term plan. And I just think that's really prevalent all over because people are always encouraged to go to college and pressed to go to college right out of high school. And for some people, that is a very good idea, and it makes sense because they're financially well off enough and they're able to get scholarships, or maybe they're able to start at a smaller school and kind of work up from there. But for some people, it doesn't make sense to rush off to a large 4-year university when you don't have the financial ability to pay for it and you don't really have a plan on what you want to do when you get there. So you just kind of go off into college and start gaining debt, and you're not really getting anything from it. So that's principle 4. Principle 5, nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. I thought this principle failed to meet the standard because when people take debt on, you expect them to take a more responsible approach. And obviously, I think in a lot of cases, people don't take a very responsible approach and just kind of spend their money and blow through it as fast as they can sometimes, because a lot of times, like, you'll hear stories of people getting out student loan money and then using the money that they got for it on other things, not even just the classes and the education portion. They're going out to dinner or doing other things with that money and not even really responsibly using it, which is to no fault but their own. I don't think that anybody else should be held responsible for that money. So that's principle 5. Principle 6, government has nothing to give anybody except what it first takes from somebody, and a government that's big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take away everything you've got. I thought that my public policy issue failed to meet this one because people, or students in general, are just kind of giving the government their money in terms of loans. So the government's not really taking it from you. In a sense, they're more, because students are signing up for this and people are voluntarily signing up to receive these loans from the government, instead of the government just coming in and taking it from you like taxes. So that was my view on principle 6. Principle 7, liberty makes all the difference in the world. And I felt this one made sense in principle 7 here. So with principle 7, liberty makes all the difference in the world, I feel this public policy issue meets the standard set in 7 because although the student loan crisis is very bad, people still have the freedom to go out and make their own decisions, and they can go out and take a risk and take on a lot of debt to become a surgeon or a lawyer or a very high earning and a very important position in the world. And you really can't do that without, in a lot of cases, student loans or some sort of loan to get through education, because once you get to that higher education, those prices are just astronomical, and a lot of people don't have the ability to pay that out of pocket. So loans are the only way, and we still have the economic liberty to go out and do that. So I would say liberty does make all the difference. So now for a conclusion, I personally feel there needs to be some version of reform made in the student lending industry. There's several ways to go about making change. One thing that I just really think needs to be the most important thing is education for people that are taking out these loans. I think the terms need to be made very clear and concise about what it is that they're signing and that they are required to pay it back, and it's not just going to be forgiven. I feel that there should be education. People shouldn't just be pushed on loans fresh out of high school, their first year going to college. They should have to think about it, a decision long and hard. And people try to plan for the long term instead of just the present day outcomes. So in conclusion, I don't think there should be much for student loan forgiveness. And once you sign your name on the dotted line, I think you should be kind of locked into that loan, just as you are in any other sort of loan. There just needs to be more reform and try to lower the cost of education, which is possible when there will be less loans taken out. So that's kind of my thoughts on the student loan crisis, and here are some sources that I used. Thank you.